Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to take a look at another round of shears, and this time we're going to take a look at the Klein versus the Knipex. Now I have a preconceived notion of how this is going to go, but I think it'll be fun to play around and see how they compare with each other. So the Klein is made in China. The Knipex is made in Taiwan. So we will see. Okay, now I realize these are not exactly the same type of thing, but your handle arrangement doesn't necessarily have everything to do with how the shears work. So if we look at these shears, we should be able to see that the way they're made is very similar. So we have about 1.25 inches of shear, and then it has the notch for cable cutting on the Knipex, and the Klein it's about 1 3/16 inches. So it's just a little bit shorter, but the two are very, very similar in how they are made. The ergonomics on the Knipex with its spring-loaded handles very well could be a little bit of an edge over the Klein, which seems to be, you know, your classic pair of shears. Nothing really wrong with them at all. They claim to be left or right-handed cut. I don't have a problem with either of them. I do think for ease of use, I kind of like where some of these manufacturers are going with the palm resting shear. I think for working in the trades, that is starting to become an easier way to go, because if you have to wear gloves, or if you just have to hold, like this pair of shears, if it was spring loaded and had the same piece, it probably would be a little quicker and easier to use. But if you're accustomed to using shears, there's nothing wrong with this. It works just fine. Okay, so we looked at the initial part of the shear on these, but let's do an overall shear measurement on both of these. We'll get them all the way open and see what the maximum amount of area we should be able to cut with both of these is. And on the Knipex, I'm going to call it 1 7/8, and on the Klein, we're going to go 1 13/16. Okay, now we'll take a look at the overall handle length of this tool, and we'll do that from the center of the pivot point. And this is, the Klein is 4.5, and the Knipex is 4 3/4. With it closed, we like to see how wide the handle is, so you get an idea how it feels in your hand. And the Knipex, from the thicker point, is right around 1 5/8 to the narrow point, probably around, well, let's call it 1 3/4 to 1 5/8. Let's do that. And then the Klein is much narrower at 1 inch. The overall length of these is nice to know, because you don't know exactly how much space is this going to take up in your tool carry. So this Klein, overall length 6 3/4. The Knipex is a little odd to try and measure because of how it's on an angle, but you are at 6.5 if you're trying to stand it on end. So 6 3/4 and 6.5. We also like to take a look to see if the tool is tensionable, and it looks like the Klein, they pretty commonly use these washers for tensioning. It's like a friction washer. The Knipex is just using a nylock. It does not have anything. Now, the nylock should hold up pretty well, but there's a little bit more thought put into, you can see here, you have that spring tensioning washer, kind of a friction washer there underneath the nylock, and you don't have anything on the Knipex other than that nylock on there. Overall handle thickness is something nice to know. It gives you an idea on what you're grabbing onto. Now, I would say this Klein, you're kind of right around the 3/4 at that spot. I'd say 3/4 at that spot, and we don't have anything really any wider anywhere. It appears as though the widest spot is right around that 3/4, just a little bit. It's in that range. Now the Knipex, there's a wide spot. I'm going to put that probably at the 11/16, and that's over 3/4. Widest spot very near 13/16. So we'll go with, that's the widest spot, so 3/4 and 13/16. Okay, so now if you got either of these, how much weight would you expect to carry around in your tool carry? And the Klein is coming in right at 4.23 ounces. And the Knipex is coming in, let's get it off of that. The Knipex is coming in a little higher at 6.62 ounces. Next up, it's kind of fun to see how hard everything is, and we'll check the rubber, the plastic, and the cutters themselves on the shears just to see what the hardness of everything is. So we'll start with our HRC, and we'll see if we can dig in with a 60. We can. And we're not making much of a mark with the 55. It's marking, but not crazily. So let's start with the 55 on the Klein. And it's about the same thing, not really marking, but it's kind of marking, if that makes sense. And yeah, 60 digs in. That means 50's gonna skate. Yeah, not even making a mark on it. Same here, not even a mark. So I would say they're probably both between 55 and 60, just because the 55 is barely doing anything. So we can go with the 55 to 60 on those. And then for our Shore A, we want to get to a spot where we just have the rubber. So I think that's going to be right here, 73.5, 69. Let's do a spot right here, 78. This is probably better. You got to get this on there just right. 76. 73. So I would say this is around a 75-ish. And then on the Knipex, the rubber is the blue parts. So let's see what we have here. 85, 86, 79, 86. So I'd say that's right around a 75, and that, or the Klein is around a 75, and the Knipex is around a 85. Okay, moving on, we're going to go with our Shore D, and now all we're going to do here is dig into our plastic on this, and it really kind of looks like there might be fiberglass reinforcing on the Klein. We'll test that with a knife then. But we'll pick a spot where it doesn't look like we're going to get. So that's about a 70. It's kind of hard to, you got to get these just right. 72. One more spot here. 73. So I'd say between a 70 and a 73. Now your Knipex. There we go. This will work good. 81. 81. 81. So that's pretty consistently an 81, and I'd say 73 to 75 for the Klein. Okay, so the rubber and the plastic is kind of, I think it's going to kind of tell us how these tools are going to hold up long term. The plastic and rubber being a little bit harder, I think is going to make them last a little bit longer when it comes time for the rubber wearing off or the plastic getting dinged up. Now to test the plastic, that plastic does definitely have glass fiber in it. You can hear it. If I hold it up here, I don't know if you could make that out or not, but there's definitely glass fiber in the Klein, and I don't think we're going to have any in the Knipex. We do not. There's no glass fiber in the Knipex. So the plastic actually might be a little bit higher quality on the Klein just because it has some reinforcing in it. It should hold up a little bit better. Okay, we're over at the load cell vise. Now we're going to get into some of the fun stuff. So what we're going to do here is we're going to measure how much force it takes to close these. You can see the spring tension already. If I take this off, our load cell zeroes up. And all we're going to do is run these closed. Now we have these at about like this, where this shear is open all the way and there's an opening here in our cable cutting section. I should say it's really designed to be for Cat 6 cable or something like that. So here we go. Let's see how much force it takes to just close the handles on this. You can see what's happening as we're changing the angle on the load cell vise. There we go. So we are going to be right at 1.6 because I got 1.7 when I closed it all the way. Oh no, it was 1.7. Okay, so 1.7 for the Knipex. Now we'll do the same thing with the Klein. We'll just get it opened up to the same spot, just like that. Everything's just barely touching. And then we'll open the vise up, stick the handles in, and do the same thing. Close it, and see how much force it takes. That number you see is me pushing back on the load cell vise. Now it is at 0. Let's see what we get. I don't expect this to be anywhere near as high because it doesn't have spring tension. So there we go. 0.7 versus 1.7. That's quite a difference on the first test. Okay, next we'd like to test these with cutting a tie wrap. And then we're going to take a look at how the tie wrap ends look in the microscope after we test how sharp the cutters are. And we'll see if we see a correlation on how sharp the cutters are on our best C scale, our edge on up scale, and then we'll see if these tie wrap cuts are supported by what we see. So first up we're going to have the Knipex, and I'm going to go ahead and, like what we did before, I'm going to put this halfway in this shear. So halfway in this shear, not this part, the flat part, we're going to go flat right halfway in the flat part. We're going to see how much force it takes to cut through. Now our previous test was important. If you remember, we had that 1.7. Well, that's kind of, it all plays into this. So let's get the Knipex into the load cell vise again. And then what we'll do is get our tie wrap in place. And I'll have 6 hands to hold everything. That's how that works, right? So let's get that kind of near the middle. There we go. That's about middle of travel. And we're going to hold our tie wrap as vertical and square with this as I can. Everything kind of wants to move on me, so here we go. So you can see we're getting into the tie wrap. We're cutting the tie wrap. I see 4.2, 5, 4.8, 4.9. 4.9 was the highest we had, and we are through the tie wrap. So 4.9 was the highest we had for the Knipex. Okay, we've got the Klein lighted up in the load cell vise. We're going to go ahead and get it started here. And we have our tie wrap in the middle of the flat area, and you can see we're starting to cut the tie wrap now. Four 4.4, 4.2, 4.4. Okay, so 4.4 was the highest we saw, but keep in mind the Klein doesn't have the spring tension that the Knipex does. So we'll put the tie wraps aside. Next we'll be at our edge on upscale, and let's see how sharp these are. Okay, we are back at our edge on upscale, and last time when we did these tests, somebody pointed out they should probably push on both sides of the tool to get a most accurate reading on the edge on upscale. So that's what we're going to do. It's, you know, everything has a learning curve to it. So that is one of the curves that we have here, and we'll just change as we go. So Klein, we're going to go with, this is the top jaw, because when I hold the pliers, or the shear, this is how we would hold it. Thumb in here, 2 fingers down here. This is the top jaw, or the top cutter. So we're going to have top cutter and bottom cutter numbers. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to go right in the middle of the cut range on this, and I have to be very careful not to touch the bottom or the scale. So we're 525 on the top. Let me get reset and we'll see what the bottom is. Okay, so we just did it this way, where this was our top. Now we'll hold it this way, and we will get what our bottom is. Now let me hold that just right. 429. So this cutter is among the sharpest that we've tested so far. We have not gotten numbers that low yet on testing. So let me reset, and we will do the Knipex. It might be a little awkward to try and hold in here, but we'll make it happen. Alright, so we're reset. Now we're going to do the top again first on the Knipex. So this is our top, because we're very clearly having the bottom there. So we're going to go about halfway, and we're going to go, so we got 712 on the Knipex on the top. Alright, now we have the lower. I'm going to hold this like this, and we're going to go ahead and do the lower. 335, so that is considerably sharper. It's almost twice as sharp. So now we have our numbers. Let's get to the microscope and see how these tie wraps look. Okay, so first up, we're going to take a look at the Klein, and we're going to take a look at the entire thing under the microscope, and then we're going to take a look at the tie wraps that it cut. So let's get that into focus, and you can see the metal is pretty nice. Few marks in the cutter here and there. They put a little relief in it right here so that it doesn't catch on anything when you close it. And here is that friction joint that I was talking about. It's pretty nice. There's your plastic, and that does seem to be glass fiber reinforced. You'll see here where I scratched it, there are indeed fibers sticking out. There you go, there's the fibers. So that's definitely glass fiber reinforced, which is kind of nice to see, a little bit more robust. There's that rubberized handle. You can see it's got like a grip texture to it, both sides there. Here's your laser etching for your part number, or your tool item number. You can see the way the laser burned in there. Other side, same basic thing. You can see one side is serrated and one is not. So this side here is not serrated, whereas this side is. You can see that when I flip it over again. Same relief in that side so it doesn't dig in. And there is our nut with the friction washer on it. Flip these over again. There's your serrated edge. You can see right there. So that seems to be a theme on these shears. One side is serrated, one side is not. Just something to notice. Now let's take a look. This had decent numbers. So we had 525 and 429. So let's see what our tie wrap looks like. So you can see that the tie wrap is mostly cut. If you recall, we had the other cutter, the other episode, that kind of pinched this to a point. It didn't really cut through per se. And you can see here, although it's on an angle, because I was trying to hold everything at once, it's kind of cut through. It didn't really smush it out. It's definitely cut through. A little bit of discoloration. You can see kind of where it was shearing through there. Yeah, so I mean, it's not a bad cut from what we've seen. And yeah, this isn't, you got that white discoloration where it was shearing through. You can see the marks from the serrated edge there too. So that's kind of interesting. Okay, so that's the Klein. Now let's go ahead and take a look at our Knipex. So our Knipex, this is made in Taiwan, has this straight edge, nicely made. This also has the relief in this corner here. Then here's your joint on this. It's just this kind of rivet, well, I shouldn't say rivet, rounded head there. Now this has an auxiliary cutter here, kind of a neat feature. I didn't really mention that before, but that would also cut things. And then the Knipex does not have a glass fiber reinforced handle. They kind of have some laser etching there for the Knipex. Here's your rubberized handle part. The rubber is pretty nice on this. I think I like the rubber on the Knipex better than the Klein, but I like the fiberglass reinforced handle better on the Klein. Then they have, I'm assuming, some sort of crimper. I'm not into this world of the industry, the telecom, as much, so I don't know exactly what you'd use that for. But let me know in the comments below if there's a particular connector that would work well for. I mean, we do Cat 5 ends where I work, but it's kind of where it stops. We don't do a whole lot more. There's your rubber for the handle. They gave it a little texture there. Now here is your laser etching. Oh, okay, there you go. They might have on there what their HRC is, 56. So I think that aligns with what we were thinking. Fit 55 to 60, so that aligns with what we were thinking. If that is indeed a 56. Did not see that. Okay, so here's our serrated side. You can see these serrated edge is way more aggressive than the Klein was. The Klein was kind of a casual serrated edge. This means business. Now you have your cable cutter part. Let's flip this over. Take a look at our straight edge grind on the inside. There you go. There you can see where I was testing hardness. There's our other grind. Nicely shaped. There's no real sharp edges other than where you would expect to have a sharp edge on it. There's our nylock, which I'd like to see that friction washer there like the Klein has. Alright, on the inside of our Cat 6 cutter, and then here's your serrated edge. That thing means business. That is definitely a serrated edge. And I think that is why we had that 335 gram on that lower, because that is not playing around. There's our spring. You can see the spring gets completely slack at this point where it's all the way open. And we just pull that right down in and compress it. And the rest of the handle here, but you get the idea. So, now the exciting part. How does the tie wrap look and how does it compare with the Klein? So here's our tie wrap for the Knipex, and you can see, you can make out them serrations. There's that serrated edge. That is not mushing that out, it's cutting through it, and that's doing a good job. There's your very clearly defined serrated edge, so you know which way that went through. And interestingly, the serrated edge wasn't what cut through most of the way. You can see that. Now if I look at the other side of the cut, there you go. You can see the serrated edge, and you can see the kind of little bit of ripping. Not a lot. Get that in focus. A little bit of smushing right there. See how that's rounded off? Just ever so slightly smushed out on that. But when you look at the end profile, It doesn't look like it's at a point or anything like that. That definitely cut in on that. So I don't know, I think it's a little bit of potato here on the cuts. I don't think the Knipex is significantly better than what the Klein was, especially considering the Knipex costs quite a bit more than the Klein does. Alright, so now I'm going to try and hold both of these in frame and focused at the same time. Good luck. So there's the Klein and the Knipex next to each other. Klein here, Knipex mostly out of focus over here. I don't think there's a significant difference when you consider what the cost of these is. The Knipex is basically 3 times more than the Klein. So you could buy 3 of these Kleins for the cost of this Knipex. Now this version of the Knipex is not German made. It is made in Taiwan, which is okay, but I think a lot of people buy Knipex thinking that they're buying a German made tool, and it has that German made quality. So is it a good quality tool? Yes. Does it have an interesting format that, hey, if I'm cutting all day long, this is nice. This is very nice. If I'm cutting all day long, this is probably what I'm going to get. But if I'm just trimming here and there and I have this thrown in my pouch, there's nothing wrong with this. And honestly, for a third of the cost, I don't know that you're going to kill either of them sooner than the other. They had about the same HRC hardness. There's a whole bunch of other stuff going on here, but I think the tensioning's better on this Klein than the Knipex, unless somebody knows something more about joinery on this sort of stuff. Is this actually a better joint than this? Educate us a little bit on that, if this is a little bit better. They both have nylocks. This has the friction washer in there. That's the only reason I'm saying I think this is a little better. You have the glass fiber reinforced handles on the Klein, which is a plus. Should hold up a little bit better, but you have the ergonomic handiness of the Knipex. So between these two, they're not really in the same price point, but the cutters are about the same length. That's what I thought we would take a look at and see how they compare. I think they're kind of contemporaries when you look at them from here front. When you look at from here back, it all kind of changes. But I do think that they're kind of contemporary when you look at it like that. So what are your thoughts? What do you think about them? Do you have the Knipex or this Klein? If this wasn't 3 times more, I do like this better, but it comes down to the ergonomics of it. If it wasn't just that, I don't know. If they were equally priced, I would definitely say the Knipex. Because this is a third as much, if you're not using them super hard, or even if you are using them super hard, if you're used to using a shear, there's absolutely nothing wrong with these. These are a great shear. They work well. They fit in the hand well. They have decent ergonomics as well. It's just not as convenient. So let me know what your thoughts are. Do you have one? Do you have both? Did you destroy a pair? What'd you destroy them cutting? I like to know all those things. And it just keeps an interesting dialogue going in the comments. We're starting to build a really nice community. Some really knowledgeable guys contributing. And check out the comments. There's some really knowledgeable people out there that are willing to share what they know. And I greatly appreciate that. So as always, thanks for watching. And have a great day.